about, when you have water that's at a certain level, the water can move, even a vehicle at a certain foot level. But this isn't the type of flooding that we're talking about. This isn't flash flooding we're dealing with. It's a different concern for this, correct?
It is. So with flash flood concerns, you have the really fast rushing water. That is a definition of a flash flood, is very fast moving water that falls up and can inundate in less than about 6 hours. That's not the type of flooding we're talking about. We're talking about tidal flooding. So this is more of like a steady rise of standing water that can just damage the undercarriage of your car. It also can lead to washed out roadways, but of course that water will eventually recede. But in light of that, again, we still do have that coastal flood warning in effect for the majority of the south side and all of the peninsulas for this afternoon, as those high tides are just around the corner, starting the earliest there in Duck around the Outer Banks at 12:18 p.m. For places around the south side and the peninsulas, we're talking high tides around 1:45 to 3:30 p.m. today. There is a coastal flood advisory for the Outer Banks. Again, we could hit some levels in Duck Pier that do have moderate or to major flood stage potential and just below record stages. So we will be watching for that over the course of the day today. But something that makes these tides even worse than what they would normally be during a typical nor'easter is that we just had the supermoon. The full supermoon, which means that the moon was closer to the earth than usual. When the sun and the moon and the earth align, that's how you get those full moons and those new moons. But during the full moon and the new moon, the gravitational pull of the sun aligned with the moon actually pulls the tides higher than normal. But it's actually even more enhanced because the moon was slightly closer to the earth than usual because of that supermoon. So we already have high tides. And that's normal. That happens twice a day, every day. Low tide happens twice a day, every day. But then you have the fact that we have northeast winds that with our north-facing banks pushes the water closer to that land. Then number 3, you have the king tide, and that actually makes the tides higher than normal. And so that's why the numbers are pushing closer to that moderate to major flood stage because of these king tides. Again, they happen right around the new and full moons, but because we had the supermoon, that enhances it even more. I do want to give you a look at what we have seen historically at Sewell's Point, the top 10 highest tides we've seen here in Norfolk and Portsmouth. So I'm gonna step aside and read them to you. We have the Chesapeake Potomac hurricane of 1933 that brought the tide up to 8 feet. Okay, that is a very high number, usually very unattainable. Then you have number 2, Hurricane Isabel, 2003, a very big storm that a lot of people here in Hampton Roads remember, where the tide levels were at 7.89 feet. Then we had Norita. Now, why is it called Norita? Because it was actually the remnants of Ida that became a nor'easter. That was 2009. Cheryl and I just talked about that. She was actually working at a news station, and she remembers being in that news station when the levels went up. Those levels were up to 7.73 feet. Hurricane Irene, 2011, 7.56 feet. Ash Wednesday, 1962, 7.22 feet. That's 1 through 5. 6 through 10, Hurricane Sandy. That's a big one too. Superstorm Sandy, 2012, was tide levels at 6.81 feet. The November nor'easter of 2006, so almost about 19 years ago, tide levels at Sewell's Point went up to 6.77 feet. Also, the Hurricane 13, 1936, tide levels right around where they were for the November nor'easter. The February nor'easter of 1998, tide levels at 6.6 feet. And then the October onshore winds about 19 years ago to the day, up to 6.53 feet. Now, where does today's October nor'easter stand? Right now, we are still projecting tide levels at 6.5 feet. If this does come into fruition at around 2 p.m. today, this would put us in the top 11 highest tides at Sewell's Point ever. So that is why this is significant. We haven't seen these tide levels in almost 10 years. So that's why we're trying to give you the precautions of, while this is not going to be a flash flood or heavy rainfall situation, this is more of a tidal flooding, very gusty wind situation that could make it into the top 15 all time here for Sewell's Point. So something to keep in mind, Eugene.